students, welcome to lesson number 32, New Public Administration, Minnow Brook Conference 1. After studying this lesson, you will be able to understand the new concepts in theory of new public administration and to analyze growth and emergence of new public administration. You will be able to understand themes and values of new public administration and to elaborate the features and contributions of Minnow Brook Conference 1. To introduce the topic, the emergence of new public administration as an alternative perspective was in a long tradition of public administration theory and thought. During the period of the 1960s, the government and its administrative arms came under heavy pressure from social and political forces for a range of issues like civil rights, higher education, social welfare, law and order, urban infrastructure and conditions. Responses and the capacity of the government to respond to these problems were questioned particularly by younger scholars and university-based members of the public administration community. To the academics, inadequacy of public responses to problems of poverty in the United States and to the morality of a systems analysis based war in Vietnam reflected the inadequacy of the current public administration thought. As a field of conceptual probing, public administration owes a great deal to the three Minnow Brook conferences that have been held every 2 decades since 1968. Distinct in their contribution in the development of theoretical tools, these conferences were also stock-taking exercises based on a thorough review of the discipline in the prevalent context. There were thus 2 aims of the Minnow Brook conferences. One is to understand the changing nature of public administration as an activity and to assess whether the available conceptual categories were adequate to comprehend the phenomena. The concern was to update the knowledge base of the discipline, which also represented efforts towards addressing societal problems. Confirming that public administration is grounded in praxis, these conferences always took into account the distinct texture of the discipline while devising appropriate theoretical devices. Let us see the meaning of new public administration. The term new public administration was used to describe new philosophical outlook of public administration. The traditional dogmas of public administration like efficiency and economy were found to be inadequate and incomplete goals of administration as an activity. It is said that efficiency is not soul of public administration. Man is the focal point of all the administrative activity who cannot be subjected to the mechanical test of efficiency. So, administration must be human being oriented and its approach should be value based. It pleads for more relevant research to prescribe and to act so as to improve life according to human criteria. According to Fredrickson, new public administration is less generic, more public, less descriptive, more prescriptive, less oriented towards considering what exists to be unalterable and more oriented to changing reality. It is less institution oriented and more oriented towards impact on client, less neutral and more normative, and it is no less scientific. According to Negro and Negro, client-focused administration is recommended along with bureaucratization, democratic decision making and decentralization of administrative process in interest of more effective and human delivery of public services. Now, let us discuss the concepts of New Public Administration and Minnow Brook Conference 1. A conference at Minnow Brook was organized in 1968, which led to the formation of the New Public Administration. Scholars concerned with the theoretical foundations, research emphasis and methodological sophistication of public administration as an academic field, and those who were more action directed, more concerned with the impact or failure of public policies, all of them came together at Minnow Brook Conference. It was referring to the new public administration movement as New Romanticism. Waldo says that it was a part of rebellion of youth and the counterculture of the non-Marxian left. But the seeds had been sown much earlier, and the following may be considered the landmarks in the growth and emergence of new public administration. The landmarks are the Honey Report on Higher Education for Public Service in the year 1967, the Philadelphia Conference on the Theory and Practice of Public Administration held in 1967, the Minnow Brook Conference held in 1968, and the publication of Towards a New Public Administration, the Minnow Brook Perspective, edited by Frank Marini in the year 1971. Publication of Public Administration in a Time of Turbulence, edited by Dwight Waldo in 1971. All the reports and publications did reflect pessimism about the state of public administration and its organizing values, conceptual frameworks and definitions of good practices inherited from 1940s and 1950s. The inherited field adhered to a positivistic approach to phenomena, and a limited view of rationality emphasized efficiency and economy to the exclusion of other values, and promoted centralized hierarchical forms of organization. The old public administration was unable, according to its critics, to deal with rapidly changing social, economic and political orders. The new public administration criticized the old public administration for its lack of an explicit ideological philosophical framework and supported an activist role for the administrator in the pursuit of social equity. Savage says that there is growing evidence that the institution of public administration have failed to finish what they set out to do, and worse, are now suspected of aggravating or intensifying the very problems they were designed to solve. It was felt that a regenerated public administration could become relevant to an agitated society and serve as the instrument for guiding social change. Public administration was to be less insular and more considerate, would have to be given to the external relationships of public organizations and to the effects of their actions. Now, let us discuss the themes and values of new public administration. The philosophy, themes and values of new public administration were best articulated in Frank Marini's Towards a New Public Administration and Dwight Waldo's Public Administration in a Time of Turbulence. The literature of new public administration stressed four themes: relevance, values, equity and change. The NPA was normative, that is, rejecting the fundamental tenets of behavioralism and procedural neutrality of orthodox public administration, and supporting an activist role for the administrator in the pursuit of social equity. Waldo supported organizational participation, decentralization and representative bureaucracy as a part of the NPA movement. Organizational participation was to be a means for promoting change and dispersing the power within the organization. Decentralization, like participation, was intended to disperse power and increase citizen involvement in governmental and organizational processes. Representative bureaucracy was meant to produce client-centered administration and representation of clientele interests by administrators. Proponents of the new public administration made much of value emphasis and normative foundations. The orthodox values of the field like economy, efficiency, effectiveness, responsiveness in elected officials, responsibility were not wrong. They were necessary but not sufficient. Other deserving values were citizen responsiveness, worker and citizen participation in decision making, the equitable distribution of public services, and provision of a range of citizen choices and administrative responsibility for program effectiveness. With greater sensitivity to these values, public administration would become truly relevant and satisfy its primary normative premise, that is, the purpose of public organization is the reduction of economic, social and psychic suffering and the enhancement of life opportunities for those inside and outside the organization. Frank Marini and others summarizes the themes of new public administration under 6 heads like we have discussed: relevance, values, social equity, change, client focused and management worker relations. Let us discuss them briefly. First one is relevance. The theme of a relevance is more a reinterpretation than an original quest. Public administration has traditionally been interested in efficiency and economy. The demand of new public administration was to deal explicitly with the political and administrative implications of administrative action. It demands meaningful studies oriented towards realities of social life. In this matter, some important questions raised at the Minnow Brook were: what standards of decisions do we select? Which questions ought to be studied and how to study them? What defines our questions and priorities for us? To what extent are we aware of the social implications of knowledge in public administration? What are the uses of public administration as a social and political science? Does public administration yield knowledge that is useful to certain institutions in the society? The point that public administration has to be relevant reinforces the argument that public administration is not merely a function but one which is linked with public well-being. It has to be socially relevant, thereby questioning the typical management-oriented public administration. In view of its well-defined goal of contributing to social well-being, public administration cannot afford to ignore highlighted in its prefix the public. Along with the concern for making the discipline relevant for the public cause, the conference also raised the epistemological issue that the knowledge that public administration has disseminated thus far did not seem relevant to understanding complex human behavior. Its failure has reduced the viability of the discipline as an inquiry capable of addressing societal problems. Being unable to conceptualize complex human behavior, public administration had hardly any takers, and this would adversely affect its existence in the long run. So, the point was how to make the discipline relevant both as a field of inquiry and a device to meaningfully address contemporary social, political and economic issues. Now, let us discuss the second theme, that is value orientation. The second characteristic highlights the importance of values, and it is a follow-up of the first theme. The new public administration rejects the value neutral stand taken by the management oriented public administration. It makes clear that the new movement advocate openness about the values being served through administrative action. The conference delegates were vehemently opposed to the value neutral position of the behavioral school of the bygone era. Since its core concern is the public administration can never be value neutral for obvious reasons. Delegates argued that public administration could not be isolated from the prevalent political, ideological, social currents, as they invariably contributed to what was considered to be most appropriate policy design at a particular point of time. Moreover, administration represented a creative blend of the values that politicians carried with themselves and the administrative culture perpetuated by the memory of the office. This was the principal argument that Minnow Brook 1 put forward to justify that public administration can never be a value neutral exercise so long as it is an activity geared to realize public goals. The idea was most succinctly articulated by George Frederickson when he stated that the new public administration is less generic, more public than his forebear, less descriptive and more prescriptive, less institution oriented and more client oriented, less neutral and more normative, and it is no less scientific, as we have discussed earlier. The third theme is social equity. According to new public administration, the realization of social equity should be the objective of public administration. Social equity means that public administration should become champions of the underprivileged sections of the society. They should use their discretion in administering the programs to protect and promote the interests of the poor people. The purpose of public action should be the reduction of economic and social disparities and the enhancement of life opportunities for all the social groups inside and outside the organization. Thus, Marini forcefully argued that the purpose of public administration is the reduction of economic, social and psychic suffering and the enhancement of the opportunities for those inside and outside the organization. Implicit here are two ideas. One is being oriented to the public. Public administration needs to be instinctively connected with public well-being. And the second one, being a design for public good, it has to address the sources of suffering due to social, economic and political imbalances which are largely artificially created. The concern was to make public administration sensitive to the need of a social equity, that is, to establish a society free of prejudices and discrimination. Unless this is done, public administration will also be an instrument for oppression. The fourth theme is change. Mohit Bhattacharya rightly says that to serve the cause of social equity is to actively work for social change. This is the motto of new public administration. The attack is on the status quo and against the powerful interests entrenched in permanent institutions. The Minnow Brook participants explored ways of institutionalizing change and remedying the bureaucratic tendencies of big organizations. The new public administration emphasizes that the public officials should become active agents of social change and non-believers in status quo. It suggests innovations in administrative machinery for bringing about social transformation. It is also advised that operational flexibility and organizational adaptability to meet the environmental changes should be inbuilt in the entire administrative system. The fifth theme is client focused administration. NPA, that is New Public Administration, advocates a client focused approach. It stresses not only on providing goods and services to the clients, but also giving them a voice in how and when and what is to be provided. It requires positive, proactive and responsive administrators rather than authoritarian ivory tower bureaucrats. The sixth theme is management worker relations. The New Public Administration emphasizes on good and cordial relations between the management and the workers. It is in the opinion of New Public Administration that there should be equal emphasis both on efficiency and humane considerations for management and workers. The new approach has to satisfy both the efficiency and the human relations criterion in order to achieve success. Now let us discuss the goals of new public administration. According to Robert T. Golumbowski, there are anti-goals of new public administration. One anti-goal is its literature is anti-positivist, which means rejecting a definition of public administration as a value free, rejecting its rationalist and perhaps determinist view of human and rejecting definition of public administration that was not properly involved in policy. And the second anti-goal is it is anti-technical, that is it decries that the emotive, creative mankind is being sacrificed to the logic of the machine and the system. It is more or less anti-bureaucratic and anti-hierarchical. These are the anti-goals of new public administration. Fredrickson called the new public administration as second generation behavioralism. In the words of Negro, as we have discussed in the first part of our lesson, NPA has to be client focused and it is recommended along with debureaucratization, democratic decision making and decentralization of administrative processes in the interest of more effective and human delivery of public services. After discussing these things, students, let us look at the significance of new public administration. The classical values of public administration are efficiency, economy, productivity and centralization. New public administration fosters a new set of values. It advocates humanism, we have seen, decentralization, delegation of authority, pluralism, personal growth, individual dignity. One may in the end say that the classical values of public administration like efficiency, economy are not entirely irrelevant. What is being suggested is that public administration merely committed to efficiency and economy can still perpetuate injustice, inequality and poverty. Here lies the significance of new public administration. Trade-offs between classical values and the new urges must be arrived, as George Frederick has rightly observed that the importance of productivity, efficiency and economy cannot be denied, but he asserts that the most productive government can still perpetuate poverty, inequality of opportunity and injustice. Both the classical bureaucratic model and the neo-bureaucratic model offer little to offset these tendencies. Therefore, the modern public administration must search for theories and norms consistent with what Vincent Ostrom calls democratic administration, what therefore J. Ruiz calls as beyond ballot box democracy, which entails a heavy restructuring of public administration, especially in terms of its orienting values. In the new public administration field, a new breed of administrator would not make the separation of politics and administration. By dint of heightened sensitivity in administrators, continued organizational development and a desire for change, new public administration might well foster a political system in which elected officials speak basically for the majority and for the privileged minorities, while the courts and administrators are spokesmen for disadvantaged minorities. In the words of Negro and Negro, the new public administration has seriously jolted the traditional concepts and outlook of the discipline and enriched the subject by imparting a wider perspective and by linking it closely to the society. Further, it has certainly broken fresh ground and imparted new substance to the discipline of public administration. What is new in it is the advocacy of social equality role recommended for the administrator. Rumki Basu observes that due to the study and practice of administration in both developed and developing countries, the trends indicate that the scope of the study of the subject has increased considerably. It is no longer confined to the description and analysis of administrative phenomenon, policies, organizations and processes. It is becoming normative as it now deals with the questions of social equality orientation, democratic orientation, ethical behavior and citizen participation within expanding administrative systems. It is also becoming comparative as it now examines and conceptualizes administrative policies and organizations and operations comprising several aspects like political, social, economic, demographic, physical and technological. After seeing the new public administration and Minnow Brook conference, let us have a look at the criticism on the doctrine of new public administration. The critics of the new public administration criticized NPA as anti-positivist, anti-theoretic and anti-management. Campbell argues that it differs from the old public administration only in what is responsive to a different set of societal problems from those of other periods. Robert Golombowski considers it as a temporary or transitional phenomena and thought that wisdom might be to simply allow its memory to further fade away. Carter and Dufresne doubts whether the social equity is actually getting recognized as an established objective of public administration, apart from the prevailing objectives of effectiveness and accountability. Further, the critics opine that the protagonists of new public administration are trying to arrogate to the public administration what actually falls within the legitimate sphere of political institutions, political processes and political leadership. There is lack of skills and technologies to implement what new public administration visualizes. Critics also fear that the concept of social equality is vague about what it means, what it requires in the public programs. Opinions vary greatly. The new public administration has not yet developed a theory of its own. The new public administration reasserted conceptual factionalism among the academics of the 1960s and 1970s and generated yet another intra-field debate as to the newness, feasibility and purpose of the contemplated changes. Commenting upon the new public administration movement as a reflection of the conflict of youth versus age, Dwight Waldo observes that children's crusades and youth movements have not on the whole written happy, brilliant pages in the history of civilization. Ingraham and Rosenblum felt that the new public administration focused on administrative reform as a means of redistributing political power and political roles. They felt that new public administration failed to develop a coherent intellectual framework that could gather widespread support. But the Minnow-Brook influence runs like a thread through the fabric of academic public administration as it evolved from 1970s into 80s. Rather than adding a layer or strata to those introduced earlier by the political science, policy or generic approaches, the influence of the new public administration pervades and influences all those. After discussing the themes, anti-goals, the significance and criticism on new public administration, let us conclude about our new public administration movement. New public administration has certainly broken fresh ground and imparted new substance to the discipline. It has some radical contents, but these can be successfully implemented only by legislation and political will. Even otherwise, there is lack of skills and technologies to implement what new public administration visualizes. Notwithstanding its limitation and weaknesses, new public administration has seriously jolted the traditional concepts and views of the discipline, and it has enriched the subject by imparting a larger perspective and by linking it closely to the society. So, thank you dear students.